Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back. So, the other day, actually Friday, I committed the unpardonable sin of guitars. Anyways, Dunlop 65. So, some of you are going to be like, congratulations, you're finally going to use fretboard oil. Because a lot of people actually saw my video on why I'm so dead set against this stuff. But, yes, I did buy a bottle. Actually, my buddy, I think, was really proud of me. I was in Long McQuaid doing my usual thing, and I've been looking at this stuff off and on for a little while. Not because I really wanted it, but because I'm a little concerned about my Les Paul. Out of 10 of my guitars, that's the only one that's ever going to actually see this stuff. Why though? Well, it appears that Gibson, when they build their guitars, we all know quality control is not always the best. And I have a 2018 Les Paul Studio, and one of the pig and pokes you're going to come across is if you look at the majority of Gibsons, even hanging on the wall in a music store, you're going to see some that look like they are beautifully finished fretboards. That's because you're actually seeing that there's actually still oil in the fretboards. Whereas you'll see some that look really dry. Well, that's because somebody over-prepped and sucked out way too much oil before gluing the fretboard down. See, guitars that have fretboards that have natural oil in the wood, they don't get varathaned or shellacked or urethane coated or nitro coated on the fretboards, because that stuff doesn't generally stick very well and it'll peel off over time. And it only takes one little opening and that's it. She starts peeling off. So if you actually bought a guitar that a company actually put a coating of some sort on the fretboard as a protector, then yeah, you're going to be one of those victims that one of these days it's going to start peeling off, and disgusting, isn't it? Anyway, so maple is a wood that's commonly also used as a fretboard material, and maple doesn't have its own built-in oils, so you cannot add oil to it because that's very, very bad. Okay, not only bad for the wood, but it's also going to get very messy and gross that you'll never clean that stuff out ever again, especially when your DNA and the oils and stuff from your fingers get in there. It's going to be very gross and you'll never get that out. So they actually use a polyurethane coating or nitro finish or whatever on the fretboards on maple because it has no natural oil in there, right? And and because it has that coating, you can't use this stuff. It's like, toss it. Now, some companies go a little overkill at times, others actually do it right. On my Affinity Telecaster, it has a maple fretboard, and they actually put the very lightest of a coating on there, just enough to protect the wood properly. Great job on that one. Fender, on the other hand, direct Fender, so your classic series guitars, or even your regular Fenders, for tellies and any Strat that actually has a maple fretboard that has a finish on it, they tend to go overkill. I was looking at, I bought a classic Vibe Strat once, and beautiful guitar, okay? Although they put too thick of a finish on the back of the neck. Oh well, stuff happens, right? I was going to buy into the Telecaster, but then I changed my mind for two reasons. Pine bodies do not belong on guitars. Pine is a wood that doesn't even take well to screws. So it's kind of like a one-shot deal. If you over-tighten that screw by the least, you strip the threads out, because pine is a very shitty wood, we'll say. It's about the only way I can describe it when it comes to guitar bodies. But that's my opinion. Okay, I mean, everybody has their own. Some guys like pine bodies. I personally don't. I don't like the idea of, if I pull something apart, I got to jam a pile of toothpicks and glue in there, let it sit and cure, and then, redo my holes, and then I should be good for a couple of rounds anyways if I ever have to take it apart again. So I'm not a real fan of pine. But I'm a worse fan of any company, period, that puts so much coating on the fretboard, on the maple fretboard, or fretboard that requires protection. I really find that very sickening. It grosses me out because they also do the neck the same way as they do the fretboard, right? So it makes for a very thick coating, slows you down, it's very gummy. You know, it's just horrifying. But, you know, it's disgusting. So anyways, a very, very thin coat is all that's required. So if there's any guitar companies watching this, take some advice. Don't put too thick a coating on because it's disgusting. But anyway, cleaning fretboards, getting back to the oil. Any fretboards that have natural built-in oil like rosewood and ebony and many others out there, you won't see them generally with a finish coat on the fretboard because there's no requirement for it and the stuff ain't going to stick to it anyways. But there is a proper process required in order to strip some of the oil away from the fretboard so they can glue the fretboard to the neck, no matter what that neck's made out of. And if it's a rosewood neck or rosewood family neck, it's going to have oil in it. They got to prep that too. Otherwise, those two pieces will not stick together properly. Not for long anyways. Maybe a few years and it's going to start lifting. This is bad. Anyways, so Gibson, in my case of my Gibson Les Paul Studio, they actually stripped out too much of the oil out of the fretboard. They're only supposed to do the bottom side and prep that. This has been overkilled. And so it's going to create dry spots. And there are some dry spots on my fretboard that I've noticed. Quite a number of them actually. More of the board is dry than has any dampness from its own oil left. And so I'm going to, hopefully this comes out in the camera. I don't know if it will or not, but I'll show you with and without a flashlight on it. But there's an up close of my fretboard. See if I can get this even closer for you guys. Now, seeing something on camera is going to be different than seeing something in real life. In real life, I can really see the difference. Okay. Now, let me grab a flashlight, see if that will help bring some light into the situation. See if this helps out any better. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I can tell. Okay. Now, I've always been against using fretboard oil, because I used an oil once. It wasn't fretboard oil, but it was an oil nonetheless, and something of a chemical concoction that somebody else has used. Said they were fine with it. So I thought, well, you know, I'll try this stuff out. I've got some of that oil kicking around, and we'll see what happens. And it started to lift some of my frets after a bit, because I guess it's definitely the wrong stuff. So stuff happens, right? We all learn from our little errors in life. And that was on my Cortex 2 guitar. Now I had to take lighter fluid and quite a bit actually to get all that crap back out of the fretboard, but I did. And there was already lots of oil in the fretboard from its own natural state. But I wanted to guinea pig a guitar that I figured I could get away with doing it on. And I got some bad results, which further amplified a lot of channels saying not to use even fretboard oil on the neck because this is going to make your frets pop, which it can, especially if you use too much oil. Even fretboard oil is dangerous in high quantities. I watched a lot of channels that actually use the Dunlop stuff and whatever other brands that are out there for guitars specifically. And I've seen them just like lambaste the fretboard, and they say, okay, we'll be back in about 15 or 20 minutes and then we'll wipe it all down because you got to let it soak in. Actually, that's wrong. One, you don't lambaste the stuff on. Two, you really shouldn't be letting it soak in there for any longer amount of time than it takes you to get the stuff on the fretboard and start wiping it down, okay? So, and you also got to make sure you go very minimal amount of oil. It doesn't take much, you know, because you're concerned more about the very top surface, not way underneath. Because way underneath, that stuff's there, but the very top surface, if it's dry, that's generally it gets dried out because, not because oil evaporates, because it doesn't, but it's part of it is the prep process that was used. Another part of it is if you sweat a lot, and you have a high acid content, you break up the oil, and it does actually kind of remove a bit of it. I don't sweat and I don't have high acid in my body, so I don't have to worry about that when playing. So my fretboards actually don't need any care as far as oiling goes with the fretboard oil. And fretboard oiling should only actually be done once or twice a year according to the majority of manufacturers out there, but still only in very sparingly amounts. Okay, this stuff basically cleans, conditions, well, there is a specific conditioner, I guess, so this basically clean and lube, I guess, for this stuff of your fretboard. And so if you use it correctly, you're fine. If you're trying to remove a lot of DNA out of your fretboard, then I would suggest there's a number of videos that show how to properly use a razor blade to scrape the DNA off, okay, which is going to pull some of the surface off, right? Just a hair, though. Like if you go the wrong way, you're going to screw up your fretboard. So it's very ever so lightly just to get the DNA off, and you'll remove very minimal amount of material. And that's going to open up the grain, so that's where this is definitely going to come in handy, and that's in that area. Because you're removing some of the top layer of the grain that way when you're removing DNA. So something to be thinking about anyway when you're cleaning your guitar. So if you start cleaning and whatnot and you're not removing any of the DNA stuff, then maybe you might want to think about the razor blade thing. Do that first, go back, and then treat the fretboard with the fretboard oil. My Les Paul is very dry on the board, so I'm going to have to maintain it with this stuff once or twice a year. Now, I will do a video for you guys on how I'm going to do the process to show you exactly what I have discovered to be the proper way to do this when my string butler comes in. Because I just put new strings on my guitar already. I don't want to pull them back and out of the way and chance getting any oil on my strings, because that's going to deaden my strings. Then I have to clean the strings. I don't feel like doing that. It came with 946s. I put 942s on, which are actually pretty good, actually. So if you're wondering about what 942s are like on a Les Paul, they're pretty good. But it is going to take a day or two for the neck to suck itself back up again because of the lighter gauge. So you're going to get a little bit of fretting, fret buzz, and a little bit, maybe a couple fret out spots until the neck pulls back up. Just because that's the general way the beast works when you take all the strings off at once. But otherwise, it's fine. It took a couple of days just retuning, everything's up to tension, strings are stretched, we're all good, it's fine, no more fretting out, no more buzzing, it's good. But I want to try 1046s on it. So I'm going to do that when my string butler comes in, so we'll strip all the strings off, and then we'll clean up the fretboard with this stuff, and give it a good little shot, and see what it looks like before and after, and then restring it with the string butler. So anyways, and why the string butler? It's a Gibson. That's all that needs to be said, okay? Epiphones are no different. They could benefit from a string butler too. Now, I have never used a string butler. I'm going by taking the word of, about 20,000 people on the internet that the string butler is like, that's what you need to fix your tuning stability issues on Gibson and Epiphone guitars, and pretty much, I guess, any guitar with a 3-3 headstock, regardless of the back rake, pretty much any 3-3 headstock could benefit for better tuning stability with a string butler, from what I've been hearing about. So I decided to buy one for the Lessie, and if it does actually work well, I'm going to get one for my SG, because it's the only other electric guitar I have with a 3-3 headstock, so they can benefit. My acoustics stay in really awesome tune, so I'm not even going to worry about them. But my Epiphone SG and my Gibson Les Paul definitely, if it works on the Les Paul the way they are all saying it does, I will buy into a second one for the SG. But in the meantime, we are going to experiment with this stuff and see how it works. And if it does work, I even told my buddy along McQuaid, I said, you might just turn me into a believer yet. In this stuff. He's used this stuff, I guess, pretty much most of his life, and he fixes guitars, and he's never had anybody come back and say that their frets blew out. So I guess the stuff actually does work if you use it properly, and it does help your fretboard, of course, retain the amount of moisture it needs from oil, especially if you have a drier type fretboard too to start with, which my Les Paul actually has. this stuff could benefit my Les Paul. I have seen guys who have guitars on the internet, on groups that I'm on, where their fretboard is extremely dry, it's cracked on them, or it's cracked in places. I can see crackage showing up right from the factory. I can see if the oil was overly stripped out of the wood, crackage could happen because there's not enough oil left in the fretboard at all to make its way through all the grain and back up again to properly do stuff. Because oil, whether you want to believe it or not, in wood, comes in wood, okay, like rosewood, ebony, and so on, that oil does not evaporate. It is always there unless it has been either completely stripped out, which if it is, there's no integrity left in the wood, so it's just going to be very lightweight at that point, very brittle, and gross and dry, and the fact that they could even get it onto the thing and punch frets in is surprisingly, okay? Now, there's still oil in the fretboard of the Les Paul. I know that there's still some oil in there, and there's some spots that are dry, but there's a lot of spots that are not so dry. But it has to be throughout the entire fretboard. It has to be as evenly as possible without dry spots. So that's something that, you know, and like I said, Gibson overstripped it out of my fretboard before they installed it, and that's not a cool thing. So I want to protect my investment in this case. My Les Paul right now is currently my most expensive guitar in here. And yes, I want to keep it around for years, and I don't want to have to send it in to have the fretboard taken off and replaced with a new one, because I might get a worse one the next time, or I might get a really good one, who knows, but I don't want to take that chance. So if I can prevent that from happening with this stuff, okay, we'll try it out. So that's about what I've got for you guys on this one. So I'm hoping you enjoyed the video and got some useful information at the same time. Yeah, we're going to catch you guys on the next one. So as usual, if you have questions, feel free to ask. I do have a lot of experience with woods, by the way, being a woodworker for many, many years. I've worked with pretty much every type of species of wood you can think of that's out there, except for some very small handful that I haven't gone near, especially due to the cost of the stuff. Like snake wood is, oh my gosh, very expensive stuff. So I never did bother working with it, but I have worked with many different species of rosewoods, ebony, mahogany, walnut, maple, of course, different species of maple as well. There are different species, yes, including your bird's eye, but even of a normal everyday maple, there are different variants of the everyday stuff. I've worked with a boatload pile of different exotic woods and non-exotics. So I kind of really got a good beat on things when it comes to what's in what and how woods are needing to be prepped and what can be refinished with a lacquer or nitro finish or whatever and what can't. So anyways, and I've seen some guys do some pretty crazy stuff too, and it ends up failing in the end because rosewood is one of the, well, rosewood and ebony having the most oil content really. They will actually push against that finish and push it off your guitar over time. So yeah, that's kind of the way it works with the top side surface. But anyways, yeah, so that's it. So thanks for watching, and catch you guys in the next one. Keep rocking. Ciao.